Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. I hope you're having a great creative start to your week. It's a very exciting day here in Sulky Land because we have a flash sale going on. Today's our video cast day. There's so much going on, so I can't wait to tell you all about it. And I'm going to share a really great project with you today because we're in the Halloween zone, okay? We've really got to ramp it up. Sew some things for Halloween, get ready for those costume creations, all that good stuff. So I'm going to be going over a really fun project. There's a freebie involved, but there's also some other choices that you can choose to create as well in the same sort of style. So we'll get into that momentarily. Lots of you saying hello, good morning. Be sure to use that live chat and talk to me here today. Put your questions in there, comments, tell me where you're watching from, give me those great little emojis, somehow engage with the live stream today because I have a great giveaway from Sulky as well, and I'll get to that momentarily. But our giveaway is for one lucky viewer who is somehow engaging with the post here today. You also need to either like the Sulky Facebook page if you haven't already, if you're watching there, or subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're watching there. That's all you need to do, and engage with the post, and then you are automatically eligible to win the little gift from Sulky today. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm recognizing everybody's name, so welcome. All right. So first up, I mentioned we're having a really great flash sale today. Flash sale, that just means at midnight tonight, the sale is done. So take advantage while you can. We have screaming deals, one day only, today only. Select items are 30% off. And this really goes together well with our Halloween theme today because all of these items you can use for your Halloween makes. So I just wanted to share with you what is on sale. And you can head on over to sulky.com after the live stream and take advantage. So these are some of our machine embroidery palettes. When we call something a palette, that means not only do you get the thread packs that you're seeing here, but you also get a full design collection that goes with that thread pack. So the which is in, which is out. If you are, an avid So What watcher, I'm sure you remember the which is in or out wall hanging that we did last year around this time. It's done entirely in the hoop of your embroidery machine, and it's a double-sided little wall hanging. So on one side, it says the which is in. When you flip it over, it says the which is out. So it's really great for your front door. Really great for the door of your crafting room. You get the idea. This palette features a ton of Sulky rayon thread, and it also features a spool of our filane thread. Filane is that 12-weight acrylic thread that brushes up and blooms after your embroidery is complete. So the spider it's probably a little hard to see. Let's see if I can make this much bigger for you. Well, that's as big as we get. There's a little spider up here that is done entirely in filane, and you brush it out so you have this like scary furry spider on your wall hanging. So it's a really fun, really great design. And again, it's an entirely in the hoop project. You add your little hanger strip out of fabric in the hoop. You combine the two hoopings into one and sew them together in the hoop. So it's really easy, lots of really great detail work, and that is on sale, 30% off. Also, you can find our Halloween palette, which comes with 8 embroidery designs that are all Halloween themed, and a mixture of metallics and rayon threads in those great Halloween colors. That is also on sale. And then our Halloween potions palette. These are all freestanding patches. You can actually do a little patch hack where you sew it directly to your background fabric as well. But these are really intended for freestanding patches. I've used them for place cards for a Halloween buffet. I've used them to label little jars, like apothecary type jars for a bathroom for really great Halloween decor. And I have an upcoming project that I'm going to share with you. It's either next week or the following week where we're using these designs. So grab them up now while they're on sale with this palette, and you'll be ready to go in a couple weeks when I share this next project idea with you. Also on sale as part of the flash sale are these great thread packs. So our glowy thread, we talked about that last week when we were working on our pet applique pillows. And we did a little Day of the Dead theme with some glowy thread and some skeletons and all kinds of fun stuff. So that 6-pack is on sale. Also, our Halloween Gnome Filaine Petites palette, that's on sale. And our Trick or Treat Filaine Petites palette. This thread pack, the Filaine Petites Halloween Trick or Treat palette, that's what we used in our Halloween Pinnacle Table Runner. And I'm still finishing up the last details of mine, so I plan to share that with you here shortly. So those of you who made that Halloween Pinnacle Table Runner with us in our webcast last month, then you already have this Filaine Petites sampler, and you've been able to use it for hand quilting and all kinds of things. So really great sales there. Also on sale are these really great Halloween buckets. These are made out of canvas, and they have like a vinyl coated kind of interior. It might even just be a coated canvas, but it's wiped clean really easily on the inside. They all have a really great handle. You could personalize it with a name, or maybe with the costume of the little one that's going to be carrying it on Halloween night. Or you could just put a really cute Halloween design on there. These are really easy to embroider. You kind of turn the bucket wrong side out so that you can place the right side up in the hoop, and you can manipulate the rest of the bucket so that it's out of the way of the stitching, and you can come up with a really cute design. I have a tutorial for using these Halloween buckets on the Sulky blog, so you can head on over to blog.sulky.com and you can get, the recommended stabilizer and some really great design ideas for this as well. But these are a great deal at 30% off for the flash sale too. And if you grab one up today on sale, you're sure to get it in time for Halloween, so you can personalize it and really make somebody's day. This makes a really great little treat bucket by your front door too when you're handing out candy. So maybe you put your last name on it, or, spooky sweets or something cute like that. So these are really fun to embroider and to display for Halloween too. And last but not least, part of our flash sale today also includes Sulky Stick and Carve. Who out there has tried the stick and carve on a pumpkin? These work really great on those fake pumpkins, that you find at the craft store, but they also, of course, work really well on the real deal, those pumpkins that are already in the stores, ready for you to purchase and start decorating with. So I do stick and carve pumpkins with my kids every single year because it's so easy to print out your design onto a piece of stick and carve and then stick it onto your pumpkin, and then they can follow the design with their cute little pumpkin carving safety kit that, you get for $3.99, whatever, what have you. And makes it so easy to make a really, really cool, impressive design. Plus, when you buy up a pack of stick and carve, you get a ton of pumpkin printables to choose from. So you can head on over and get, I don't even know how many designs, 6, 7, 10, something like this is included. You just go over to the website once you have your little code inside of your package, and you can print out the design of your choice and easily carve a really cool looking pumpkin or pumpkin scene Like the one you see here is a scary tree with this little jack-o'-lantern and some bats on it. I would never be able to do that on my own. So it's really nice to have this little, cheater sticker, I guess, that you're going to print out onto your stick and carve. And these come in different packs. So you can get like a pack of 3, a pack of 10. You get the idea. So these are really, really great to use for little ones for Halloween, but also for adults. I mean, if you've got like a shindig that you're going to for Halloween and you're going to have a pumpkin carving contest, and if not, I highly suggest gather up your neighbors, have a pumpkin carving contest. It's so fun. You could even print some of these out for them and have them ready to go. So again, the stick and carve works really great on the craft pumpkins, but also the real deal. When you're using it on a real pumpkin, make sure that your pumpkin is super dry before you apply that sticker because it's a water-soluble stabilizer sheet. So if your pumpkin's a little damp because, whenever we get them out of those big boxes, at the store, they have some dirt on them, what have you. So I've made the mistake in the past of washing off my pumpkin and then placing that stick and carve sheet on it, and it already wants to start dissolving because I didn't dry the pumpkin well enough. So make sure if you're going to wash off your pumpkin, maybe do it the day before you plan to carve it so that it's nice and dry. You can put your sticker on there and start carving through your pumpkin and your sticker. Then you just rinse it all away when you're done. There's no trace of it. You don't have any marker on your pumpkin, and you inevitably have to use like a Sharpie because you can't see what you're doing. And then there's leftover Sharpie on your pumpkin and it just gets gross. So this is a really great way to transfer your design to your pumpkin. And spoiler alert, if you have leftover stick and carve after the holiday, you can use it for your sewing projects because it's the exact same product as that stick and stitch stabilizer. And you can use it to transfer embroidery designs, quilting designs, sew right through it. So it's really, really great all-purpose stuff for transferring designs. All right. So that's our flash sale today only. Screaming deals for all of these really great Halloween products that I mentioned. Be sure to get that Witches In and Witches Out machine embroidery palette. That was so popular last year. I mean, I can't even tell you how many of us made that project. And the design is just so, so cute. It has all those great Halloween embroidery colors with the lime green and the purple. And I'm just in love with the witch's boots. All right. So be sure to take advantage of that today only. All of those deals will expire at midnight tonight. So be sure to grab up those Halloween buckets too, because you're going to want some of those for, grandkids, kids, nieces and nephews. It would be so cute to do a little photo shoot with them all in their costume and all in their little personalized treat bucket. So really, really cute. All right. Also, today is the day of our t-shirt quilt video cast. That's right. At 2 p.m. Eastern Time, I will be live streaming directly to you over on our education platform, which is sewingonline.sulky.com. So even if you think maybe a t-shirt quilt is a little bit more than you're, wanting to, dive into these days, because it is a commitment. I'm not going to lie. A t-shirt quilt is not for the dabbler, if you will. I'm going to give you some great ideas for not only creating a t-shirt quilt for that special someone, the graduate, maybe a teacher who's retiring. Would be so awesome to collect some t-shirts of all of the places he or she has taught at. Maybe it's a coach, something like this. But they're really, really great heirloom gifts. And, even if you don't have a whole bunch of t-shirts to create a full quilt, I'm going to be giving you ideas for using t-shirts as fabric in other ways. So if you have a special t-shirt that has seen better days, I'm going to tell you how to stabilize it. I'm going to tell you how to repair or conceal or highlight rips, stains, tears, holes, and make that t-shirt into something special that you can gift to someone and really make their day. So whether you have one t-shirt, 4 t-shirts, 35 t-shirts, we are going to be covering it all today at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And we've partnered with embroiderydesigns.com on this event because adding embroidery designs to t-shirt projects, whether you're wearing that t-shirt and want to add embroidery to it, or you want to use an embroidery design to sort of bring together a project, create a universal theme with a bunch of different t-shirts that maybe don't make sense together, that embroidery can kind of bring everything together and make it work as one cohesive piece of fabric or, project, if you will. So we're going to go through that, and we're going to go through how to create personalized quilt labels using embroidery designs, as well as, you see in this picture here, the t-shirt quilt that I made, some of the motifs are sitting really, really high up on those blocks. I was not able to really fussy cut them so that the motif was in the center because some of the shirts were much smaller than others. So filling in those sort of blank areas on the t-shirt with embroidery designs really makes it work all together so that your motifs don't look out of place or strange when you can't really fussy cut them so that your motif is in the center. So I'm going to go through all this and much, much more today at 2 p.m. So make sure that you're registered. It's $5.99 to register, but for that $5.99, you're going to get a 5-in-1 t-shirt quilt pattern, and you can use these 5 patterns to create all kinds of quilts. You don't have to use t-shirts for them. So you'll find a basic t-shirt quilt, then you'll find a quilt pattern that has borders, a quilt pattern that has frames, a quilt pattern that has cornerstones and borders, and then a quilt pattern where your motif is set on point. So all of these patterns you can use for so many other projects. And you can isolate, let's say, a 4-patch block and create a wall hanging, a table topper. You get the idea. So quilt patterns are so, what's the word? They're so great for using in so many different ways, right? So you will get this 5-in-1 t-shirt quilt pattern. It's valued at $9.99, which again, there's 5 patterns in here. So this is a really great deal. You will also get this entire collection of embroidery designs from embroiderydesigns.com. So for your $5.99, you're getting over $25 worth of stuff. You'll get the football scene, the love soccer design, the made with love for you design, the school supplies, and the adventure awaits design. So all of these packaged up, curated for this event, you will get as soon as you register. You can download and save them to your computer in the format that you need. You can use them for a t-shirt quilt or so many other projects. So this is a really, really great deal. And of course, you will get the entire video cast. So you'll get the whole class where you could participate live, or you can watch it on demand after our live event ends today. And you have all access to that course as well. You can refer to it again and again. Maybe a t-shirt quilt isn't for you right now, but you have, somebody graduating high school in a couple years, and maybe you'll want to rewatch and refresh your memory and go back to that content when you're ready to dive into a full t-shirt quilt at that time. So always available for you to watch on demand whenever the live event ends, just like all of our events over there at sewingonline.sulky.com. All right, so Nadine says, I am confused. T-shirts are at 2 p.m. Isn't this for the Halloween mug rugs? Yes, it is. I'm about to get to the mug rugs. I was just letting everybody know that at 2 p.m. we're doing the t-shirt quilts. So I want to make sure you're all registered and ready to go for that. All right. And yes, t-shirt quilts are heavy. That's a good point. It's kind of surprising because when we wear a t-shirt, we think, they're super comfy, they're airy, we wear them in the summer, we really wear them all year long. And then you go and make a quilt out of it and it's like, whoa, this thing's kind of heavy. So we're going to talk about that this afternoon as well. All right. Janet says, looks like I have to get some stick and carve for the grands. Love this idea. Yes, I think you will love using it. And they will too. Also, if you don't want to print out your own design, or excuse me, if you don't want to print out one of the included designs onto the stick and carve, you can set them down with a marker, like a permanent marker or even a dark pen, and they could draw their own pumpkin design onto the stick and carve, and then you stick that onto the pumpkin. So they don't have to go directly to the pumpkin and draw anything and mess up, and here we've got marker to remove. Nope, they can do it all on the stick and carve. They can even do it with pencil till they get their design perfected and go over it with a marker so they could see it a little bit easier, then stick it on the pumpkin. So, it is just such a time saver. And, I don't know about you, but I have a child who is quite the perfectionist. I don't know where she gets that from. But anyway, she gets so upset when she makes a mistake. And it's heartbreaking, right? So this is a really great way to kind of get over that hurdle, right? You don't have to go directly to the pumpkin. Doesn't have to be perfect. You could try your hand on the stick and carve, even draw it on a piece of paper until you have it right. Then put the piece of paper under the stick and carve and trace over your design and then put it onto the pumpkin. So you don't have to use it in your printer. You can draw on it too. So that gives you the opportunity to do things like put your name on the pumpkin. I've even printed out the Sulky logo onto a piece of the stick and carve and then carved that into the pumpkin. So all kinds of things you can do. You don't have to use the included designs. You could find some clip art or a logo or print your last name in a block font or something like that and put that on your pumpkin. So lots of really great ideas. I also like the idea of printing out just one letter, like the letter of your last name, put that on your pumpkin. Then you can like bedazzle it or do some other carving things, even paint it, put it on your front porch for the fall season. So all kinds of fun you can have with that product. All right, let's see. Esther says, I'm looking forward to today's class. My granddaughter is wanting to make t-shirt quilts with the monthly matching shirts she started when her little ones were born. Oh, that is such a great idea. Perfect. Let's see. Could you use the stick and carve and press on the pumpkin, then draw a design and then carve it? Sure, you certainly could. You can, the only drawback really to doing that is your pumpkin is so textured. And I find that when I draw directly on the pumpkin, the lines of the pumpkin kind of get away from my design. Your pencil kind of goes into the little valleys of, the pumpkin. So if that doesn't bother you and you're just going to, carve straight over that, yes, you could definitely do that. All right. Patty says, tell us about the bats behind you. So this is a table runner that I made out of a cluck cluck sew pattern. I made this many years ago, and every time I put it up for Halloween, I get so many comments on it. So this quilt pattern comes with the 3 bat blocks that you see here. The left one, the right one, and then the one that's in the center. And the quilt, I think, features like 4 bat blocks across and something like 6 bat blocks going down. So it's a rather large quilt. And I really loved the bat piecing. It's all done. It's not paper pieced. It's all done with piecing techniques. So what I did was I just isolated the 3 blocks and I made a table runner out of it. So that's what I mean about quilt patterns being so versatile. You don't have to look at it and say, oh my gosh, I'm never going to make a quilt that big, or I don't have that many t-shirts to make the quilt, etc., etc. You can look at it different ways. You can just make one bat block and maybe that's a centerpiece on your table or a placemat, right? Or you can add borders along the side and have like a little bit wider placemat. Or you could stitch 3 blocks together and bind it and have a nice table runner. So you don't have to look at quilt patterns and say, oh, I'm not a quilter, or I'm never going to make a large quilt, or that's too time consuming, that type of thing. Me, I didn't want a whole quilt just for Halloween, but I definitely wanted a table runner, and I had to piece together these bats. So you could find the blog post on what I did here, how I took that cluck cluck sew pattern and reimagined it into a table runner. And then this whole thing is quilted with white glowy thread. So I used the Sulky Glowy. I did a lot of outline quilting. I think all of my quilting lines around the bats are about maybe 3/8 of an inch apart. So lots of quilting on here, lots of little, geometric, intersecting lines. And it turned out so cool. So when the lights go out on your table, you have this glowy table runner underneath, maybe some candles or things like that you also have on your table centerpiece. So you can find that tutorial on the Sulky blog. And again, it's a cluck cluck sew pattern that I started with and just reimagined it into a table runner. I also used glow-in-the-dark fabric for the bats themselves. So it's this spider web print, and the white portions of the webs are all glow in the dark. So it all goes together and is really super glowy and fun. So definitely be thinking about those specialty threads as we head into all of our Halloween sewing. I'm actually going to use some Holoshimmer metallic thread on the mug rugs today, and you'll see where we've used that and how, and I'll give you some tips for working with Holoshimmer thread. But one more piece of business before we get to today's tutorial. Our India trip with Craft Tours is starting to ramp up. We've got some people registered, so it's getting really exciting. This trip is happening in March because during March is the Festival of Holi in India, and we are going to experience that in all its glory, get covered with all kinds of colored chalk. So it's definitely a bucket list trip that you won't want to miss. We're going to be focusing on gold metallic embroideries, so that kind of really fits into what I'm talking about today with our Holoshimmer metallic threads. So if you're interested in this tour with Sulky and Craft Tours, head on over to the link that I posted in the description of today's live stream, and you can learn all about it. We're also heading to Greece in May and back to Germany and Austria to see where Sulky thread is made and manufactured and to experience the Christmas markets in the end of 2025. So lots of things to think about and start saving for. And you can head on over to our link there in the description of today's live stream and learn more about this trip and get on the list for our other ones as well. All right, so Halloween mug rugs. Speaking of, kind of thinking about quilt blocks and using them in different ways, mug rugs are really just little quilt blocks, right? So you could take these little mug rug quilt blocks that I'm going to show you today, enlarge them, make them into a bigger piece, make them into a table runner, or keep them small and have a little mug rug set. I love giving away mug rugs as gifts as well. They're really great scrap buster projects. So let's get into it. There are 4 Halloween mug rugs that we debuted this past week, and one of them is our free project for the month. It's only going to be free for the month of September. So make sure you grab up the cauldron mug rug pattern. That's the freebie for the month of September. Make sure you grab that up, add it to your account at sulky.com. And basically you just need to add this to your cart, go through the checkout process. It will say $0. Maybe bundle this up when you get your paper solvy and all the things I'm going to be talking about today. Your Holoshimmer metallic threads, all of that good stuff. Once you add that to your cart and you go through the checkout process, it will then be in your Sulky account. So you can grab the PDF and print the pages that you need, print the pattern onto paper solvy. I'll go through paper solvy in a minute If you've never heard of it, it's an amazing product. But this is the freebie mug rug. Really cute little cauldron with some spooky little bubbles coming out of it. We also have a black cat version. We also have a bat version. And we also have a witch's hat. Love this one as well. So these are all done with foundation paper piecing techniques. So I'm going to go over that sort of in a nutshell with you and ask your questions in the live chat in the comments, and we will address them as we go along. All right, so you can also get all 4 mug rug patterns if you choose as a collection. But again, that cauldron is free right now. The other 3 are up for purchase, or you can grab up the whole collection of 4. With each one, you will get the individual instructions for piecing together or for doing the foundation paper piecing for each one. They differ just a little bit, as you can see, as far as, you know, section 1 going with section 2 and so on. This will make more sense as I go along. So each one has their own little set of instructions and their own pattern pages to print onto the paper Solvy. So when we are doing foundation paper piecing, that means we are actually sewing our fabrics to a piece of paper over the printed pattern lines, and then you will fold your fabrics to the right side, trim them a little bit, and keep adding your fabrics over the pattern lines. Okay, so that's what foundation paper piecing means. We're using paper as our foundation for piecing together our blocks. So that's where Sulky Paper Solvy comes in. All right. Paper Solvy is a water-soluble paper product, okay? It is the coolest thing ever. So, much like the stick and carve I just showed you, you can print on these, and look how thin this paper is. I mean, I can almost see my hand right through it. So what makes this cool, other than the fact that it's water-soluble, is you don't have to set your stitch length super short, because you don't really need the paper to perforate. When you're printing out a foundation paper piecing pattern onto regular printer paper, that paper is so thick. So to go and remove it, you actually want to perforate it a bit so that when you go and remove it, you don't pop your stitches out along where you're tearing it away. So Paper Solvy is ultra thin. So you can use a regular stitch length, and then instead of tearing it away along your stitches, you're going to take a wet Q-tip or cotton swab, get it really wet, and run it along your seam lines, and then your paper is just going to lift up and away. And if you have a foundation paper piecing pattern that has really tiny little pieces in it, maybe these tiny pieces are surrounded by larger pieces. Well, when you use regular printer paper for those types of paper piecing patterns, it's very difficult to go in and remove those tiny little corner sections or whatever they are without popping out your stitches. So that's why most paper piecing patterns direct you to have a very short stitch length when you are sewing along those lines. And when you go to tear those away, they tell you to use little tweezers or little things like this. It becomes really cumbersome, and quite honestly, it's more difficult than it needs to be. When we use Paper Solvy, you can leave those little bits behind, and if your Q-tip doesn't allow those to sort of lift up and away from the pattern, you can leave it all intact until your mug rug is complete and bound and totally finished, quilted, everything. And then you could throw it in a rinse and spin cycle in your washing machine, and all the Paper Solvy is gone. so you don't have to worry about your stitches coming out, getting all the little bits out, getting all the little fibers of paper out, because it all will rinse away. Isn't that wonderful? It's so great. So we also have a really cool full quilt pattern. It's called a mystery quilt along on our education platform, but the whole quilt is done using Paper Solvy, and you just look like a total rock star. Like, you have done the most amazing, intricate looking piecing, and you started with scraps. You didn't even have to do much cutting first. That's the other thing I really like about foundation paper piecing patterns is, and I'm going to show you here, I'm going to start with 2 fabric scraps, right? This is a fabric scrap from the table runner behind me. It's just in a strip. And this is a random fabric scrap I had in a bin, just a plain white piece. Well, it has a little bit of sort of like blender pattern on it. I'm going to use these to create portions of the mug rug blocks, and I don't have to pre-cut them. As long as they're large enough to cover the space of that particular piece, I can use them just like this, sew along the line of my paper piecing pattern, and trim it up afterwards so it's a perfect fit. So super awesome. If you haven't tried foundation paper piecing, grab up this cauldron pattern, this cauldron pattern, because it's our freebie for the month, and you can try your hand at some foundation paper piecing. So this particular one has a black fabric, a white fabric, and then a fun little Halloween print. Then there's another print for the binding, and you can use whatever you like for the backing as well. You'll also need a piece of batting, and then of course you need some Paper Solvy. So for this particular pattern, you need 2 pieces of Paper Solvy, and you're going to print your piecing patterns, just those 2 pattern pages onto your Paper Solvy. So when you load this into your printer, make sure you've selected just those 2 pages that you want, so that you don't print the instructions onto your Paper Solvy. We don't want to waste it, right? So be aware of that as well. So also with your pattern, you'll get this piecing diagram. And oh my gosh, you look at it and it looks frightening, right? Because all these letters and numbers and lines and all of that, it will all make sense once you have your individual pieces, or sort of blocks within the block, let's say. Once you have all of those pieced together, then you can lay it out onto your flat work surface according to this diagram and sew those sections together. Okay? So I know this looks kind of complicated for what it is, but it all makes sense once you have your individual sections done. So on here, notice how you can see the A section, the B section, the C section, and so forth, all the way to J, right? So we're going to take these section by section to do our paper piecing. That way we're breaking it up into chunks and it's making much better sense. Okay, so this is just a reference sheet. This is the first pattern page that you're going to print out. The second one looks very similar, so I'm just showing you this one for now. This is the one I have printed out onto the Paper Solvy. So what you want to do first is cut out all the sections along that outer dotted line. All right, so see how there's an inner line and then there's this outer dotted line. You want to cut them out along the outer dotted line. That is the line that includes your seam allowance. Okay, so we want to make sure that the fabrics that we're choosing, they not only cover the section, I'm going to start with section J because it just has these 2 colors, and I'm just going to cut out section J so we can all kind of do one little section together. So you'll cut out each section along that outer dotted line, and it's color coded for you as well. So you can see the white portion is the white fabric, the grayed out portion is your black fabric, and then on the subsequent pages, you'll find that green fabric print that was shown on the cauldron. So this will differ ever so slightly, depending on if you're doing the witch or the bat or the cat. But I'm just going to show you the cauldron here. So now I have section J cut out along that outer dotted line. Okay, so we not only want our fabric piece to cover inside here, but we want it to extend all the way to the edge so that we have that seam allowance. So when we go to sew J onto section I, we are going to sew it along and have that seam allowance. Does this make sense? All right. So first things first, you want to kind of audition your fabric scrap right side up over that pattern. I can see through it. It's a little bit hard to see through it because of the lighting in here. But you can also use a light box too. If you happen to have one of our daylight wafer light boxes, those are really awesome for paper piecing because you could see right through most of your fabrics. So you want to kind of audition it over. Make sure your piece is large enough to cover that section plus the seam allowance. Then you're going to flip your fabric over so that the wrong side is facing up. Well, actually, no. Take it back. Your first piece of fabric is going to be right side up. All right. Then we're going to place our second piece of fabric wrong side up. So I have this right side up and I have it kind of along the edge of the seam allowance here. I'm just going to take a little pin and pin that in place so that I can hold it up for you and you can see it. All right, so we have our first one right side up, and now I can kind of fold this over so I can see the second piece that I need. All right, the second piece that I need is going to be out of black fabric. So I'm going to first audition it and make sure I have enough fabric to not only cover that section, but also the seam allowance. And now I'm going to place that fabric wrong side up so that my fabrics would be wrong sides together and extend the edge beyond that stitching line. This is going to be our stitching line between pieces 1 and 2. So you want to take into account your seam allowance and overlap it a little bit. So what I'm going to do is quickly just hand sew along this tiny little line rather than going to my machine, because my machine is currently set for machine embroidery for our event later this afternoon. So I'm just going to do a really quick little running stitch along that stitching line from the paper side so that I can see that line. So now, bear with me as I do a little bit of hand sewing. And as I lose the thread from my needle eye as well, because you know, when you're live demoing something, these things happen. And yes, Esther, I do have them right sides together. I'm sorry if I misspoke. Let me just try and thread my needle. Is it just me, or has threading needles gotten more and more difficult with my current age? All right. We'll get there, everyone. And it does get a little bit confusing as you go along. So always just refer to your pattern directions for which piece is going where, and right side and wrong side, and you will get the hang of it. And then it'll be like you're on autopilot as you go through the rest of the pieces. All right. So just for the purposes of this, I have a really long running stitch along that stitching line. And now I can remove that pin, and when I fold this back, you'll see I have my second section attached to the first. So now what I need to do is, first off, I can trim my seam allowance because I have that sewn. You don't want to trim the paper, just that seam allowance. It's a little bit hard cutting in the air, but you all will do it properly. All right, so now I've trimmed along that seam allowance. I can fold my fabric to the right side. Everybody with me? I'm just going to pin that down since I don't have a pressing surface here, but you definitely want to have your iron close by. It's really nice to have a little mini iron and maybe a wool pressing mat if you happen to have one of those, because you can have a little ironing station right next to your sewing machine. So when you do these little seams, you don't have to walk all the way over to your iron, give it a little press. It's just really nice to kind of go to your mini iron, give it a little press, and then you can continue on. You do want to be careful using steam because you're using paper solvy and you don't want your paper to get all wet yet. All right, so now that I have that trimmed up, I can trim along that pattern piece along the seam allowance line. And I will have section J completed. Now section J is the easiest one to complete because we only have these two fabrics to contend with, right? So now I have section J. Section J is done. I can set it aside and I can continue with each little section. You know, look at section M. We've just got two pieces. Super easy, just like I showed you. Section L is going to be the reverse of section J. So nothing too complicated here, but then when you go to stitch them all together, then you've got the look of your cauldron and it looks super impressive, right? Looks like you are a true artist with fabric and thread. So I love these little, I don't really want to call them cheats because, hey, we're doing work here and it's important work. All right, so I would just set this aside. Then when I go to sew my pieces together, I will follow that seam allowance line for my matching pieces and sew them in order according to the pattern. So that's where this diagram comes in handy. So you could see piece J is the lower right-hand side there, and it's going to get sewn onto piece I, and then that's going to get sewn onto piece M, and you get the idea. So after you have all these sections, Sharon is saying, is there an easy way to keep track of the sections that you've done? Actually, it's already done for you because you have your paper still attached, which is labeled. So it says J1 right there on the paper for you. So just turn it over. You can have all of your sections laid out. Then you'll refer to this diagram and put them all on your flat work surface. Stitch A to B, B to C, C to D, and then you have your top row done. Then you'll stitch F to E to G to H, and you'll have that middle row done. Then you could sew the top row to the middle row along that seam allowance line and follow suit with that lower row. You see how it all goes together? All right. And yes, someone's asking about reducing bulk. So some of these areas, you could see section B has these tiny little corners to it because that's our little cauldron, bubble of potion or whatever's coming out of the cauldron. So when you have those little areas, you are going to get a little bit of a bulky, a little bit of bulk. So you can clip into the seam allowance a little bit and make sure that, you're pressing your seam allowances nice and flat. When I'm foundation paper piecing, I do press my seam allowances to one side. I would love to say that I always press them toward the lighter fabric, but the reality is you kind of want to press them the way they want to go. Because once you start adding more sections, it can become impossible to always press your seam allowance toward the lighter fabric. So I wouldn't worry about it too much because we're going to add some batting to this and some backing fabric. That's going to help with any show through that you might have with darker fabrics. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. The other thing you can do is you can add a little bit of fusible interfacing or a fusible stabilizer like Sulky Soft and Sheer to the wrong side of your fabrics before you piece them together. That's going to help reduce any kind of show through that you might have with your darker seam allowances. All right. But I really, honestly, I wouldn't worry about it too much because then you can add some quilting as well. You can add some decorative thread, which I'm going to show you right now. And that's probably going to take away from any little, tiny little, show through or shadow that you might have from those seam allowances. You do want to always press after you have done all of this piecing to make sure that things are lying flat so that when you do add all the pieces together, even when you have these little corner areas that are going to intersect, just make sure to really press them nice and flat. Another really great tip is to use Sulky 50 weight cotton thread when you're doing the paper piecing. The 50 weight cotton thread is really lightweight, but it's also really strong and has, it's a long staple thread. So when you're using it for paper piecing and for quilting and for just piecing in general, it almost disappears into the fabrics. So after you sew them together, you don't have this little telltale bump, which I can definitely feel right now because I used a super heavyweight 12 weight thread to demo this for you so that you could see my stitches. Okay, so I could definitely feel my thread inside of that seam allowance because I used that super heavyweight thread. When you use this 50 weight thread, you have no telltale bump. It's almost like you can't feel the thread at all. So that also helps reduce the bulk and makes sure that your little mug rug is nice and flat after when you're pressing as you go. You can also use this 50 weight thread to do some of the quilting. If you want to do some quilting on, the cauldron itself, like you could see here, the cauldron has some straight line quilting across it. Or if you wanted to do some straight line quilting along the white background pieces, that 50 weight cotton thread is really going to be what you want to use for that. So it kind of disappears into the background. That way, when you use your fun decorative thread, if you want to use glowy thread, metallic thread, poly sparkle thread to really, make this shine, then those threads are going to become the focal point, and any quilting that you've done with that 50 weight thread is going to kind of disappear into the background. So speaking of adding some glitz, this is our giveaway today for one lucky viewer who is watching right now, commenting, posting questions, giving me those great emojis. That's all you have to do to be automatically eligible to win this gift from Sulky. This is our Holoshimmer Metallic most popular colors assortment. So you could see really great colors in here for Halloween. You got your silvers, your yellow, your gold, that great lime green, and the pumpkin orange. And then there's also a red in there, which is going to really come in handy when you get to some holiday sewing coming up. So this 6-pack is going to go to one lucky viewer who is watching and commenting and doing all of those great things. So the Holoshimmer comes into play here with the quilting. You can do a blanket stitch around your little cauldron bubbles, or maybe you want to do straight line quilting or just quilt inside of the outline of the cauldron using some really great glittery metallic threads. You do want to go up to a size 90-14 needle when you're working with this thread. This is a flat metallic thread. So it's kind of like, it's ribbon-like, okay? And it has this great holographic effect. It's one of the coolest metallic threads, really. So because it's a flat thread, You also want to make sure that it's not twisting off of the thread spool while you're sewing. And that becomes pretty challenging when you're using a horizontal or a vertical spool pin, because what's happening, I would love to, oh, here, I've got a hollow shimmer right here. What's happening when it's on those spool pins that are either straight up and down or facing the needle like this, look at all the twists that are happening when this comes off of the spool. We want this to remain flat, because what's happening when it twists on its way to the needle, especially if we're sewing at really high speeds, we can't even see it while it's happening because it's just coming off the spool so quickly. What's going to happen is all of those twists are going to build up and then it's going to snap on you. So you're going to have thread breakage and you're going to say, why does this thread keep breaking? Why did Sulky tell me to buy this thread and it breaks all the time? It's breaking because of all of those twists in it. So you want to slow your machine speed all the way down. It's going to feel like agony when you're sewing these blanket stitches, but we're not adding that many and it's a small project, so we can handle it, right? Slow your machine speed down. Use a metal needle. They're called metal needles on sulky.com, but you might also know them as metallic needles. That reduces the friction that you get from these metallic threads, because when you're sewing at high speeds, they actually heat up a little bit, and that can also cause them to break. So that metal needle helps redistribute, or something like this, the heat that the thread can somehow, or can sometimes cause as well. So that type of needle, and go up to the size 90-14, so there's enough room in the needle eye for this thread to fit through. And since it's ribbon-like and it's nice and flat, we want it to look nice and flat. We don't want it to look twisted on our project. So if you happen to have a thread director, you can put your thread like this facing the needle so that when it unrolls, there are no twists to it. So we don't want it like this facing the thread path, twist, twist, twist. And we don't want it on our spool pin like this, twist, twist, twist. See all those twists? It's really going to build up over time, and we really want to prevent that from happening. All right, so if you have a thread guide and you're able to manipulate it so that your spool is going this way with the thread coming off of the top of the spool, you're going to have the best results with that. All right, so you can also use the Holoshimmer Metallic as a decorative binding accent. I absolutely love this look. So you can set it for a blanket stitch or a zigzag stitch. I love a blanket stitch for this because it kind of reminds me of Frankenstein's monster, and it goes with that Halloween theme. And you can blanket stitch along the edge of your binding using some really pretty Holoshimmer Metallic threads. So here's what it looks like in the orange. Here's what it looks like in the purple. So such cool thread effects you can achieve to just bring a little more, you know, kind of glitz or sparkle to your fun Halloween projects, whether it's this mug rug or this really great bat table runner or quilt. So I think you'll really have fun with it. You can create a little spooky scene with your great cauldron mug rug, and I'm sure you're going to want the other three as well so that you can have a nice set of mug rugs for the holidays. And again, these make great gifts to give away for teachers who are always getting mugs for gifts, right? So why not give them a mug rug instead? And maybe you can decorate it with their name, add a little embroidery design to the cauldron or something like that, and you can really make it your own. So fun with foundation paper piecing and fun with Holoshimmer Metallic threads. Just a little sampling of the things that you can do for Halloween. All right. Barbara's saying the thread director is great. It is. Let's say, yes, keep the thread vertical, Diane. That's your best bet. And make sure that it's coming off of there flat. If you're noticing it twisting, you're going to want to stop your sewing, rethread the needle, hopefully reposition your thread spool so that you have better luck with it there. All right. Oh, a top stitch needle helps too. It has a bigger eye. Great tip, Kathy. You can also use a top stitch needle. I like to use a metallic or metal needle when I'm doing high-speed sewing with metallics, like machine embroidery, or if I'm planning on quilting in the hoop, that type of thing, because at that high speed, you can really get that heat going, and that's, going to make your thread snap or break. All right, perfect. So I think I might be caught up on all the questions, so that's great. I thank you all for joining me today. I'm going to hop off here and head on over to sewingonline.sulky.com and get ready for you all to join me for our t-shirt quilts video cast happening at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. If you can't join live, you can always watch the whole thing on demand after the live stream ends. So be sure to register so you can get your 5-in-1 quilt pattern and all those great embroidery designs from embroiderydesigns.com. You can use those all year long for so many different projects. And a t-shirt quilt makes a really great gift for the holidays, no matter what size it is, right? You can make a t-shirt quilt with just 4 blocks if you want, and have it be a little wall hanging or a little accessory in somebody's dorm room or something like this. So lots and lots of ideas, planning, all kinds of tips I'm going to share with you in about an hour. So make sure you're registered over there at sewingonline.sulky.com, and I will see you